That's the Employment Minister, Senator Eric Abetz, talking there at Parliament House. We were listening to him speaking live. Now, talking about a range of issues there, but mostly commenting on the sentencing of the former Health Services Union boss, Michael Williamson, who's been sentenced to up to 7.5 years in jail for defrauding the union. Now, Eric Abetz there talking about this in relation to the government's Royal Commission into unions, saying that that Royal Commission is appropriate, saying that this sort of behaviour is systemic and we don't only have it in the Health Services Union. Now, the Senator was also saying that something terribly wrong is happening in the union movement. Now, before we went to that, we were talking about the week that we've had here in the House of Representatives and some of the extraordinary behaviour culminating yesterday in the opposition's attempt to move a motion of no confidence in the Speaker, Bronwyn Bishop. Now, that was easily blocked by the government, but it certainly didn't stop Labor from trying. They accused Bronwyn Bishop of all sorts of things, of playing favourites, of being an instrument of the Liberal Party and of gross incompetency. Now, the MPs in charge of keeping members in order are the party whips. Political correspondent Greg Jennett caught up with 3 of the whips yesterday, Labor's Chris Hayes and the government's Philip Ruddock and Scott Buckholz.
The member will resume his seat.
Madam Speaker.
I name the member for Isaacs.
The result of the divisions is ayes 82, noes 54. The member for Isaacs is therefore suspended from the House, from the services of the House, for 24 hours.
Today is the day when, for the first time in the history of the Commonwealth, someone is thrown out for saying, Madam Speaker, that everybody has to acknowledge that this farce has gone on for far too long.
Chris Hayes, Philip Ruddock and Scott Buckholz. I don't know what the collective noun is for a triumvirate of whips, but let's call it a whips masterclass. And Philip Ruddock, first of all to you, we've had 35 sitting days in this 44th Parliament. What's easier or harder even to manage? Is it a thumping majority or a tight minority in a hung Parliament?
Look, I think the only management issues are dealing with people, and there are always a range of issues. I mean, whips have a wide range of responsibilities. We even have to decide what offices they sit in. We decide what seats they have. We decide when they can come and go. We decide what order in which they will speak in the Parliament. There's always a lot of sensitivities. Managing them is really what whipping is about.
Is it any more difficult from your point of view, having been Father of the House for a while now, is it more difficult or indeed easier in this Parliament if we make the direct comparison with the last?
Oh, it ebbs and flows. I mean, last, because it was very close, I think it was perhaps responsible for whips to say to members, you can have no leave, because there may be a vote immediately, and it made the job very much easier. You could just explain. When you've got the numbers, you've got people who think that they're entitled to come and go, and you have to ensure that you're able to maintain the House. And I just tell my colleague, I have always ensured that we have an absolute majority, and that is absolutely essential, so that we can manage the House if appropriate.
Well, Chris Hayes, Philip Ruddock does indeed hold the whip hand in that category. He has the majority. You also, of course, were here in the last Parliament. Is your job any tougher than the equivalent in Labor last time around?
Well, I think at the position at this stage, we obviously want to maintain discipline on our side, and leading up to the government's development of a budget, you can see a lot of emotions being built up, particularly this week in the Parliament. And to some extent, it's a matter of ensuring that that's well targeted. But as you could see today, there's a lot of emotion out there, and trying to actually get people to settle down a little bit. That's part of our job too.
Everyone in Australia knows bias when they see it. Everybody has to acknowledge that this farce has gone on for far too long.
Bizarre. It is ludicrous. It is over the top.
And the Parliament cannot have confidence in a Speaker who refuses to be impartial.
Let's talk about these recent events we've seen. It was a rough day at the office in many ways for the Speaker. What lay behind this from Labor's point of view, Chris Hayes? Because the frustration seemed to have been building for some time.
Well, look, today was the 34th day of parliamentary sittings in this term, and today was the 99th person who had been sent out of the Parliament by the Speaker. That being the case, 99-0 is something that you could see the overwhelming passion starting to build up as a consequence of this. And one of the things that I think we've been very strong on is ensuring that despite the lack of numbers on our side, is that there's some balance in terms of making sure that we are able to press the argument and hold the government to account.
Scott Buchholz, let's bring you in at this point. A scoreboard running 99-0, does it ever cause any embarrassment to you? Is it inexplicably lopsided at the moment?
I'd challenge anyone in the opposition ranks to identify someone from the government ranks that should have been ejected from the House. The regretful part of the current situation that we have with reference to numbers in the House is that we have seen the opposition's numbers in the House as low as we have seen since Federation. So with the lower numbers comes a greater voice, a greater disruption, and I think the 99-0 is consistent with the performance in the House. If you're an independent arbiter watching, like I say, it would be difficult for you to find someone on the government side who you believe should have been ejected.
You should withdraw without reservation.
And the member will not shout at the chair.
98 people have now been thrown out of the House by you. Every one of them from the opposition. 98 love.
I'm no sook. I hold the record for being ejected from this place. I didn't stand up like a great big sook like the members of opposition business did today.
The noise levels, when you hear them, do come from both sides of the chamber. Is there any reason why no one stepped over the line on the government side so far?
There are standing orders which the Speaker applies to the general rule of the House. Robust debate is a byproduct of the Westminster system that we all embrace. Again, I just make the point that name me someone who you believe should have been ejected from the House, show me the standing order on what they should have been ejected on. I believe that there's a lack of evidence there to support individual people being ejected from our side.
Mr Ruddock, this scoreboard issue, do you feel any embarrassment that it's got to this level?
Not at all. Look, I mean, it's important to understand the dynamics. There's a bit of staging involved in this, and it's what I would have expected. And congratulations, Chris and the team, for pulling it on. It's part and parcel of the contest, and you expect that. And you look at what's happened before, and you wonder whether or not it can be developed. I have been named once in public life, and it was by a Labor Speaker. And he asked me to withdraw some comments, and I did. And he said, well, that wasn't a sufficient withdrawal. And I asked the Speaker, how far do you want me to grovel? And he didn't think that was an appropriate response on my part, so I was named and had to leave the House. It only happened once, but there are always moments in which you look at the when you're on one side and the Speaker is drawn from the other, you suggest that there may be a degree of inappropriate decision-making. Let me say, I think you'll find it happens on both sides, and it's always been there.
And Chris Hayes, do you accept that this comes with the territory? This is Labor's lot right now, and I think, as Christopher Pyne said, in the chamber, you just have to get on with it.
Well, I come from a rugby league background, and I'm sure if there's a 99-0 penalty count against Queensland, even Scotty Buchholz will be out there spitting the dummy.
I think you'll find that there is always a number of people removed from the House for a short period of time. Usually, you might find when there's a fairly robust contest on a particular day, 3, 4, 5 people might be removed. You'd have to get up on that basis, 34 days, 5 people. You're about 250 if it was happening every day. I don't think it's all out of
Well, I've actually checked the record, and at the moment it's running about 3 to 1 over anything that we can find in the past.
I would remind the member that he must address the motion as he is
I am, and that's why standing orders should be suspended. And And you have just given a cracker of an example, Madam Speaker, a cracker of an example of your partisanship.
What about the argument that says Labor's just being played off a break here? It's taking the baits that are dangled in many ways by Joe Hockey and others with fairly robust performances there at the box.
I think we might be over-crediting Joe's performance in that respect. I think the way this opposition's performed is probably no different than any other opposition has performed in the past, but the penalty count has certainly been far more vicious on this opposition.
And Scott Buckholz, how much do you anticipate more of this by Labor, the sorts of challenges that we saw on the Speaker today, or do you think that was blowing off some steam early in the life of this Parliament and that might be the end of it for a while?
I think it is the end of it for a while, because today was nothing other than a premeditated attack on the Speaker, even before Parliament had sat in for question time. The manager of opposition business had already prepared speaking notes to suspend standing orders. It was nothing short of premeditated, and I would suggest that there is another way we could look at this. Is it purely the Speaker's problem, or are we truly looking at an opposition that is, in all fairness, 3 times worse in performance standards than any other opposition we have seen in the history of Federation in this Parliament?
That's meaning, are you 3 times better than anyone that's ever performed in government?
Well, no. My point stands.
Can we roll up, please?
Is it the Speaker performance, or is it the opposition's performance?
All right, well, gentlemen, the Parliament enters a new phase when it returns on Budget Day, and I guess new challenges for all of you then, but thanks for your time today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Bit of an art to it. Whipping in all senses, Chris.
Yeah, look, I think I'll have to concede that one.